Okay. All right, so we heard the magic words here, recording is in progress. So welcome everyone. This is session 3 of Your Personal Power series. In case you need additional help with your speaker view, please make sure that that you switch your view to a speaker view going forward, just so that you have the best possible experience here. But once again, welcome. This is number 3 of a set of series that we have named Your Personal Power with Coach Jeremiah Miller, and sponsored by Women in Big Data. As many of you know, because you are part of Women in Big Data, we are an organization that focuses on promoting women within the tech industry and big data in general. And we have grown dramatically from a very modest start of 15 individuals to over 17,000 individuals with representation and chapters in essentially most areas around the globe, whether they are developed areas or underdeveloped areas. And it's a fact that we are very proud of. The way we support women is throughout their career spectrum, from people that are about to graduate, through early career, mid-career, and late career, as women also look into giving back into the tech world into the community. Now, as we have done in the previous 2 sessions, we are joined here today by my mentor and my coach, Jeremiah Miller. I was very lucky to meet Jeremiah. I will say it must have been 7-8 years, Jeremiah, now that we know each other.
No, we look the same.
Yes.
That we did so long ago.
And Jeremiah was instrumental in changing my mindset in a number of fronts and helping me develop the tools and techniques that I felt were needed in order to advance my career and in order to move from a place where I felt pretty stuck. And that is Jeremiah's gift. Jeremiah, as you will see on his bio on the next page, pictured here with young Gable, who is turning 4.5 or will be 5 very soon. Jeremiah is a coach that has spent over 12 years helping companies and executives precisely getting unstuck. He provides tools, techniques, and mindset shifts that addresses those behaviors that do not allow you to move forward. So today is an example of that. Today we will be focusing on a set of behaviors that we are generically calling the lies we tell ourselves. So with that, Jeremiah, I will pass it on to you and stop sharing.
Thank you very much. We're born with 2 fears. So straight out of the womb, we have 2 fears. Those fears are loud noises and falling. Every other fear we have in our life, we learn. And almost all of our fear development, our fear acquisition, is complete by age 7. So really what we're talking about is in our early childhood, based on the experiences we have, the trauma we experience, the struggle we might experience, the relationship with our parents, based on those things, we develop the fears that by and large affect us the rest of our life. It's crazy how in our 40s, 50s, and 60s, these fears that we learned when we were 3 and 4 years old often still dominate our behavior and have in large part defined the life we've lived. It's crazy. Let's mute would you mute everyone, Eliana?
Yeah, I think we can do that. Manoj, can you mute yourself?
Everyone, please mute yourself, or I'll mute everybody, and then unmute Jeremiah.
Yeah, go ahead and mute all, and then
okay.
I'll unmute myself.
Right. Okay. Hang on for 1 sec. Gallery. Look and see.
I'll keep going.
Okay, hang on. I found mute all.
Wonderful. Now no one can get a word in edgewise, just like I like. So our whole lives are in large part like, if not defined by, at least really heavily influenced by the fears we learn when we're young. And we learn these fears because of neglect or because of trauma or because of things that happened to us in our early childhood. And it's good that we develop fear early because our fear serves us when we're little, powerless, helpless kids. Our fear can lead us to like overcompensate in some ways and to strive to excel, to get the attention of the parent that otherwise won't pay me attention. So because, like for me, I'll use my example. My dad left when I was 3, gone, didn't have a relationship with him. And then my mom remarried when I was 6, and then they divorced when I was 10. And so early on in life, what I learned was if I love someone, especially if I form a close connection with another man, male role model, a caretaker, what I learned is if I love somebody, then they leave me. So early on, I developed a fear of that, and that for decades influenced my behavior. I wouldn't let people get to know me. I wouldn't open up and be vulnerable. So these things affect us throughout our adult lives. And what I see often as it relates to leadership and leadership coaching and leadership development is it is these exact same fears that we've had since before we could ride a bike that still affect us in our executive or our C-suite or executive or leadership managerial roles today. It's the same stuff. And I'm going to share a really powerful idea today. It's one of my favorite ideas. So if I had a TED Talk, this would be like one of 2 ideas I would do my TED Talk on. And I've tried, have applied and gone to tryouts, have not yet made it, but that doesn't mean I never will. But this would be my topic. So I've drawn a picture for you. This is an iceberg, obviously. Like, what a great drawing. I know. You can see the one thing all of us know about icebergs is that they're mostly underwater, 90% or whatever. You can see the water line. You can see the iceberg. And what I've done is I've divided it up into 4 sections. And this iceberg framework, the context for this iceberg framework is this. There are things in your life that you have never been able to change. Cycles that keep repeating in your life. The same crap that happens again and again and again. And you're like, man, I wish I could change how I reacted in that situation. I wish I could change how I communicate or how I show up when I'm in these sorts of situations. And but so the outcomes that you get in your life that you wish were different, but you've never been able to change them. That is the context for this framework. So this is the iceberg framework, and it shows us why we get the same bad results over and over and over and over. And it also provides a strategy for changing those results in a way that closer to anything I've ever seen in leadership development is magic. Like, this idea can transform people and situations that have been stuck for years and years and years and decades. So here we go. The iceberg is divided up into 4 sections. The first section is entirely above water. It is the apex, the top of the iceberg. Next section is half above and half below the waterline. Third section is below the waterline completely. And then the 4th section is down deep. The top section represents the results that we get in our life. So these are the outcomes. So I call this, by the way, I encourage you, if you have something to draw with, draw along with me. Take your own notes on this. Draw the pictures with me. It will help in your retention of this idea and help potentially in you practicing it. So this is the results. And if there is anything I'm writing up here, if there's anything that's not clear in how I'm communicating it, or it's unclear either in written or spoken communication, just pop it into chat and be like, Jeremiah, what does that mean? I can't read it or whatever, and I'll make sure I clarify. So The top represents the results we get in our life. Specifically, what we're talking about, the results we hate. The results we hate. I don't like that I am not taken seriously at work. I'm not thought of as a strategic leader. I'm not trusted. I hate that I destroy relationships and that people who are important to me, like there's trouble there. I hate that I always panic or freeze when I'm in a high performance situation and I fail whenever I get to the top. Those sorts of things. I hate that I'm in this constant conflict cycle with my children. Those sorts of situations. So any of the outcomes in our life that we don't like, those are the results. Now, as all of you know, this is not a new idea. If you want to change the results that you get in your life, you can't just focus on the results that you're getting in your life. Everyone knows, if you want to change your results, you need to focus on your actions and take different actions. So the second layer down is actions, and this is going to start to describe the relationships between the sections of the iceberg. So here's the relationship. The section below creates or heavily influences the section above. So the actions that we take, our behavior, how we show up, how we treat people, what we do every day, what we do or don't do, our actions, in large part, creates the results we get in our life. This is common knowledge. And this is where people fail to change the results they don't like. Because what I've seen, at least for the last 12 years of doing this work, but also I've seen it in my own life and the lives of people I care about, is we tend to think that we can just work really hard to change how we're behaving, and that's going to change the results we get in our life. And instead, what we see is we can make a short-term behavior change. We can do it for a little while. And then eventually, we start the old behavior again. And the results, the cycle continues, right? So typically when I work with someone, they've tried to change this stuff, the thing that I'm coaching them around, they've tried to change it, like it's affected them forever. And they've tried and tried and tried and tried, and eventually they've just given up because they just figured it was impossible. And here's why just focusing on what you're doing in order to change your results is a bad idea. Because, as you can see, actions is not the bottom of the iceberg. How we behave is created by or largely influenced by the section below. And the section below is feelings and emotions. We act because we feel. And so because we feel a certain way about something, maybe we're fearful, or we're angry, or we're resentful, or we're hurt, we're frustrated, those sorts of things. Because we feel that way, we act out of those feelings. And as a result of acting out of those feelings, we get the same crappy results we've gotten forever. Luckily, that's not the bottom of the iceberg. The bottom of the iceberg, what creates the feelings and emotions we have? What determines how I feel about a certain person or a certain situation is the most important thing. Thoughts and beliefs. I call this perspective. So here's how this works. We have a certain worldview. We have a certain perspective. We believe things about ourselves, about other people, about the world. And as a result of how we look at the world, our perspective, as a result of how we think and believe, look at the world, that makes us feel certain emotions and feelings in certain situations. which make us act a certain way, which make us get the results we get in our life. So here's, I have an example here I want to share with you. So we get bad results in our life because we act in a certain way. We act in a certain way because of how we feel in that situation or with that person. And we feel that way in that situation or about that person because of our perspective and how we think and what we believe about the world and ourselves and everything. Now, I started off by talking about fear. There is a certain kind of belief. There is a certain kind of belief that is a bad belief. It is a belief, it is the kind of belief that keeps us stuck. It is the kind of belief that creates the bad results we get in our life. And there's a name for this kind of belief. This is called a limiting, L-I-M-I-T-I-N-G, limiting belief. A limiting belief is just a belief that sucks and that keeps you trapped in bad cycles in your life. That's what a limiting belief is. And we learn limiting beliefs as we develop our fears early in our childhood. So if I learn when I'm young, because of the way my parents treat me, or because my dad was gone, or because of things like that, if I learn that I'm not worthy, or the corollary, if I learn that my worth as a person is based on my performance, the grades I get, how I do in school with the other kids, how I do in sports. If I learn as a child, based on how my parents treat me and my experience, that I'm only worthy in relation to my performance, then I develop a limiting belief that I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy, inherently worthy of love. I'm worthy if I'm performing well. If I develop that limiting belief, then when I'm in situations where I'm struggling to perform well, or where the stakes are really high, and if I fail, that means, if I'm in a work situation where it's an important outcome, then I will be scared and I will freeze because I'm so afraid of failure because of what failure means about me. So if I have a limiting belief that my self-worth is tied to my performance, then typically what I would see here is when it came to important situations where performance was mattered, I would be a control freak. I would hold on too tight. I wouldn't let anyone else do the work because it had to be perfect. I would be a perfectionist. I would avoid failure at all costs. I would reject negative feedback. I would do all of these things because anytime I struggled or stumbled or was challenged because of my limiting belief, I interpret that as I'm not worthy. And so feeling that way will cause me to act poorly. I'll be naughty. I'll treat people poorly. I might attack them. I might get defensive, frustrated. I won't be vulnerable, right? I'll be protective. And as a result, I get the crappy results at work and in my relationships. So here's an example, a real life example that I've saved from a couple of years ago. So check this out. We'll examine this. And this is just notes I was taking while I was going through this with a client. But here's what happened. This client is an incredibly successful leader. Runs a huge publicly traded company, is a president there, runs it nationally. And anytime he loses an employee or anytime somebody isn't happy with something about the company, he takes it personally. And it really messes him up. And this conversation came about because he was at the President's Club, taking the top performers in their company out in this beautiful week-long experience. And there were some negative people there, like complaining about stuff. And he took that so personally, it ruined his entire time. So, and he realized, he's like, that is not right. I'm letting these people have way too much power over me. I shouldn't care so much about what they think. He's like, but I've been this way my whole career. How do I fix this? So here's where we started. What were the results that he was getting that he did not like but couldn't change? Well, he felt guilty when people aren't happy. He would get sidetracked and distracted. He would spend an entire day tracking down and trying to make someone happy or solve a complaint that isn't his responsibility to solve and is pulling him off track of the important things he should be focused on. But he gets distracted and sidetracked. And he did not like this. It caused him a ton of guilt. It caused him a ton of stress. And it was affecting his marriage, all this stuff. Maybe some of you can relate to this. So that was the result that he didn't like but had never been able to change. I asked him, okay, what are the actions you take? This is my question to him. This is how I coach around this framework. What are the actions that you're taking? So here's how to get a little more out of this, I encourage you to write down a result that you get in your life. Could be at work, could be not at work, but what is your version of this? What is the thing that frustrates you, discourages you, that you hate about, that happens again and again, that you've tried to do something about it and have been unsuccessful so far? So take a minute and write down, maybe you've got a few. Write down the one that you wish you could solve the most. Okay. So my question to him then, my question to you, what are the actions you take that create or contribute to or influence that result? What do you do that causes that? And here's what he told me. He said, well, I try to solve people's problems. I try to jump in and save the day. And I get really controlling. He's like, you know what else I do? If I get a hint that someone isn't happy about something, I try to convince them they're wrong, and here's why they should be happy. So he said, I convince them, I sell them, I try to solve their problem. And when they're not happy still, despite his efforts here, he feels guilty and discouraged. Okay? So for you, how do you contribute to your problem? I'm not saying you cause it entirely. I'm not saying it is 100% caused by you completely. What I am saying is you are the largest contributing factor to the problems in your life. Like your behavior, have you seen those, like I have a 4.5-year-old son, so all my analogies will be dinosaurs or solar system stuff, maybe some other animals. We have this scale model of the solar system in one of our books that we read, the Planetarium book. And it shows our sun, it shows our solar system and our sun. Maybe you've seen this graphic. And the sun is taking up like most of the page. And then you turn the page and it shows our sun as this tiny, tiny speck. And it shows the largest star that we've found so far in the universe as this massive thing. So our sun goes from being the dominant thing, right, in our solar system to being this tiny speck. That's kind of like this. You are the huge star that is primarily the largest thing contributing to your problems. And then there are other specks that also contribute to your problems. They're irrelevant, largely because you can't do anything about them. So my focus with leadership is intentional leadership, and the core principle is everything is a leadership issue, and you're the leader. So with my clients, I get that there are other people doing things and there are other situations, but Jeremiah, you don't know what it's like at my job. You know what? I don't, but that's almost irrelevant compared to your behavior. So that's where I focus. So your behavior. So what do you do to contribute? to that. And then I asked him, I said, so why do you act this way? When you find out that someone is unhappy or dissatisfied, or they're leaving the company to go to a competitor, what feelings, emotions do you have that cause you to try to save the day, solve the problem, convince them and sell them on why things are great and they've got the wrong perspective, right? And here's what he said. And by the way, this took an hour. So it's not like I asked him the question and he's like, oh, well, this, and this. No, we verbally process this together, but this is the outcome. So if you're struggling with this at all on your end right now, that's normal. These notes are the results of, an hour-long conversation to really tease these things out. Here's what he said. Well, when somebody isn't happy at my company, here's how I feel. I feel offended, attacked. I feel misunderstood. I feel pressure to fix it. I'm scared of being found out. I feel like if they quit, that reflects on I'm a bad leader, and like, I hope nobody sees it because I know I'm probably don't deserve to be in this role, and I'm a fraud, and all those sorts of feelings that he has. Fear that he can't do this. Maybe I'm not made out for this job. If good people are leaving, or if good people are unhappy with some aspect of our company, maybe I'm not the right guy for the job. I think it's powerful, and I'm smiling and laughing because it's a common experience. We all experience this stuff. I laugh at the human condition. Like, we are all 3-year-olds, and we're ruled by our emotion, even though often it's illogical. But so here's how he feels. So someone at his company isn't happy, or they're going to leave. Here's how he feels. And so he jumps to action, save the day, and this is the results he gets. So I asked him, okay, let's drop down to thoughts and beliefs. What perspective do you have? And this takes a while, you talk through it, but basically, like, what's your perspective, or how do you think about your job at work, or your company, or the people who work for you? How do you think about them that create these feelings? And here's what he came up with. First of all, he said, well, any failure I have is a complete failure. So one perspective he has is, if one person out of 1,000 isn't happy, that means he's a failure. That's a perspective that he had. He didn't realize he had it, but as we talked through it, he realized it. He has a perspective that he doesn't deserve to be here. So he never went to college. He worked his way up. And so he doesn't deserve to be in the role, is a perspective he has. He has a perspective that losing people is bad. He has a perspective that it's up to him. So his perspective was, well, it's up to me. Like, of course, it's my job. And this is crazy. So, and this is something he's been proud of for 20 years. His purpose at work. I work hard. My purpose at work is to make people successful. So my friends can retire well. My friends meaning the people who work with him. That's a lot of pressure on his shoulders. And so it's up to me is a belief he has. Check this out. I'm largely responsible for other people's happiness and success. He believes he is largely responsible for other people's happiness and success. If people aren't happy, it's my fault. I got lucky to be where he is. And also, I noticed one other thing. He takes compliments personally. So when someone compliments him or expresses gratitude, he really holds on to that. So you can see this perspective he has. He feels a great deal of responsibility for other people. Now, does it make sense given how he grew up? Absolutely. I'm not going to tell you his life story, but growing up in poverty, growing up in crime, growing up how he did, it is crazy that he made it to his role. Like, it is a true success story. But one of the things that he learned along the way is that it's up to him. And eventually that became morphed over into the idea. And I'll tell you when it happened. It happened when his son died. He had a 10-year-old son who died in a carbon monoxide accident on a boat, on a ski boat. And up until that point in his life, he was pretty selfish. This is him admitting this to me. And when his son died, he made a vow that his life was not going to be about him anymore, and that he was going to do something more meaningful. That's a great thing, right? That's positive. It is, except if you take it to this extreme. But he made a vow to his dead 10-year-old son. And he's lived by this vow ever since. You can see how this could be powerful. Okay. So here's what we came up with. I asked him to define his limiting belief. That's the step here. So the next step in this is to very clearly and concisely and simply define, write out what you think your limiting belief is. So I'm not worthy, his limiting belief. I'm responsible for other people's happiness and success. That's his limiting belief. So everything that happens. So here's where we validate this whole thing. So you define your limiting belief. He did. His limiting belief is this: I'm responsible for other people's happiness and success. And I said, okay, thought experiment time. Let's pretend your limiting belief is true. Let's pretend it's true. Then when someone, if that's true, if you are responsible for other people's happiness and success, then when there's someone at work who's unhappy, they might even be thinking of leaving the company. If you are responsible for their happiness and success, what's a reasonable way to feel about that situation? It's this: if this is true, then it's reasonable to feel offended, attacked, misunderstood, pressure to fix it, fear that I can't do this, fear of being found out. Those are reasonable emotions to feel if the limiting belief is true. And if, because the limiting belief is true, if this is the reasonable way to feel, you know what? You know the reasonable manifestation of those feelings? That. Trying to solve the problem, save the day, convince them and sell them because of ultimately a vow you made to your son after he died 20 years ago. And as a result of that, is this a reasonable outcome? Would you feel guilty when people aren't happy? Absolutely. Would you get distracted and sidetracked and discouraged when you can't save the day? Well, of course you would, because you believe that you're responsible. So what we've just done is we validate the limiting belief. First, you guess at the limiting belief. You're trying to define it. You're like, well, what exactly is my limiting belief? So you work through it, you define it, and now we just run it up the iceberg and say, if it was true, what would be a reasonable way to feel in these situations? Okay, yeah, actually, that's how I feel in these situations. And then you go all the way up. So we just validated it, and it held true. Usually does. Occasionally, you'll try to go up the iceberg with the limiting belief, and it won't match. And so what that tells us is that wasn't the right limiting belief. So then you take another stab at the limiting belief. Okay. So the lies we tell ourselves. Here is the lie that he was telling himself for 20-something years. The lie is he's responsible for other people's happiness. Another lie he was telling himself: it's up to him. Losing is bad. I got lucky. Any failure is a complete failure. The limiting beliefs we have are lies. Now, limiting beliefs are one of the reasons they're so difficult to deal with and dangerous in our life is because they're self-fulfilling prophecies. If you believe that other people's success is your responsibility, then you start to find evidence for that. Oh, look, I made that guy successful, and I made her successful, and look how I helped her, and now she's successful. And so the way our brain works with these limiting beliefs is once they take root, which they do early in our life. Remember, these are from age 1 to 7, we develop most of these things. And then they're strengthened the rest of our life. Because if I learn at age 4 that if I love somebody, they're going to leave me, and then I see more evidence of that happen with friends who move away, and my adopted dad after they divorced, and a girlfriend who breaks up with me, and my brain is looking for evidence of something I already believe to be true. Okay, great. So here's what I know about these things, the lies we tell ourselves, the limiting beliefs. We all have them. They're poison, and they are causing the worst trouble you have in your life, the things that you would give your arm to change, the things you wish could be different, are the result of a limiting belief or multiple limiting beliefs. And it's how you feel and your behavior as a result of those limiting beliefs that you have that are causing all the trouble. And it's the reason you're not connected with your children, and it's the reason you're not connected with your spouse, and it's the reason you're not successful as you want to be at work, and it's the reason that this sort of thing always seems to happen to me, is primarily because of limiting belief. And when I said magic, remember earlier, I'm like, this is the closest thing to magic that I've ever seen. It's because changing your perspective cascades up. And if you change your perspective, and there's a way to do it, we'll talk through it, then it changes the way you feel. And if you change the way you feel, it changes the way you act. And if it changes the way you act, it changes the results that you get in your life. And so I've seen people struggle with, I struggled in my own life with this and saw a really quick transformation. And I've seen this over and 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 over. Impossible problems, impossible challenges. As soon as people identify and change a limiting belief, things just start to change. And it's not even hard after that. But because we don't know about limiting beliefs, because we just think that here's a limiting belief, people can't be trusted. If you have a limiting belief that people can't be trusted, well, you're going to find evidence that people can't be trusted. See, look, I knew they couldn't be trusted. And so you're going to act in a way that doesn't trust people, and people don't trust you. And so you're going to create a life where people can't be trusted and think that's just the way it is. So here's how you know of a limiting belief. Here's some things we say. These are red flags. What do you say these sorts of things about in your life? Well, that's just the way I'm wired. That's just how God made me. That's just how my brain works. That's just in my DNA. That's just the way I am. That's how I've always been. 5 phrases. There's some other, like anything like that. We say those things defending limiting beliefs. So if you say something like that about whatever situation you have in your life, there's a limiting belief there. Because you're not wired that way. And that isn't your DNA. It's a belief you have. And the cool thing is, we think they're facts. We think limiting beliefs are facts. I'm going to read off a little list. So this is no BS. These are limiting beliefs that I've collected over the last 10 years. Every single one of these limiting beliefs was from a client or something in my own life. Most of them from clients. And every single one of these limiting beliefs, the person changed it and proved it was wrong, and they had transformation in their life. So check this out. Here we go. These are all limiting beliefs. I'm not creative. I'm not good at fixing things. I need to do it all myself. I can't dance. I'm selfish. I get distracted easily. I hate cold water. That was one of mine. I'm not a morning person. I'm not spontaneous. I get injured easily. It's better to just not try hard. If people knew the real me, they wouldn't like me. I have a bad memory. I'm not good at public speaking. It needs to look perfect. I can't sing. I'm not qualified to do whatever it is that you're talking about. Small talk is stupid. I'm not a good writer. Taking risks is scary. I'm a creature of habit. My opinion doesn't really matter. I need permission from other people. People can't be trusted. I don't deserve to be loved. I'm not artistic. Failing is a very bad thing. Failing is a very bad thing. Is that true? No, it's a limiting belief. I'm a procrastinator. I'm not a very motivated person. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough money. I never come in first place. I can't make a big difference. Being rejected is a bad thing. Is that true? No, it's a limiting belief. I hate looking foolish in public. And one of the kings of all limiting beliefs, or queens, we talked about last time, negative feedback is a personal attack. And really, there's a limiting belief that shows up in a lot of different ways. The most fundamentally common limiting belief is some version of, I'm not worthy. And we learn it when we're young because of how we're treated. And we believe it the rest of our life. And it affects every relationship we have. And it affects us in our work and with our kids. So those are limiting beliefs. Crazy. But Jeremiah, I'm not a morning person. That's not a belief. I'm tired if I can't wake up and be functional in the morning. Well, yeah, you've believed it for so long that you just take it to be true. And because you just take it to be true, that's your experience. But you can change it. So let's talk about how you change your limiting beliefs. Okay. Because your brain has decades of practice of reinforcing your limiting beliefs and finding evidence of your limiting beliefs, we need to break that. Okay, so first of all, just know this. Your brain is against you as it relates to this limiting belief thing. And that's okay. And you don't get these outcomes that you don't like in your life because you don't get them because you're a bad person or because you're unworthy. You get them because you act as if you were unworthy. So in order to change this, the analogy I like is it's like being an attorney who has to convince a jury that the defendant is innocent. You are the attorney and you have to convince your brain that your brain has been wrong all along with the limiting belief. So you need to convince yourself that you're full of shit and that you've been telling yourself a lie for so long. And part of this process is just understanding it. If you don't know this, it's hopeless. You're going to try to change your behavior and it's not going to work long term. And you're going to go, that's the normal human experience. So, so here's what you do. Step one, 3 steps to this. Step 1, define your, I made up a word. I call it your unlimiting belief. Unlimiting belief. What is your unlimiting belief? It's a functional opposite of your limiting belief. So if your limiting belief is, go back to this guy. If your limiting belief is, I'm responsible for other people's happiness and success, his unlimiting belief that he came up with was, I'm responsible for, it was something like, I'm responsible for giving people an opportunity. to be successful. I can't do it for them. I am responsible as the leader of the company. I am responsible for creating opportunities for other people to be successful. ... The rest is on them. Okay, so that is unlimited belief was essentially that, some version of that. I'm responsible for creating opportunities for other people to be successful. ... The rest is on them. That was his unlimiting belief. Did he believe it when we talked about this right away? No. That's okay, because remember, your brain still believes the limiting belief. So define. Step one, define your unlimiting belief. So what that means is you need to write out what your unlimiting belief is. So take your limiting belief, turn it into some version of its opposite. Step two, now that you have become aware that you have a limiting belief in play, and that's what is going on. Like, first of all, you have to buy into this whole thing. If you don't believe it and it doesn't ring true to you, you're not going to do anything with it, and so it's just information. But if this resonates, if this makes sense, if you're like, well, yeah, actually, I can see how that would have that impact on my life, then step one, you got to define the unlimiting belief. Step two is you need to put it up somewhere you're going to see it every day. Make a reminder for yourself, because remember, you don't believe it yet. And your brain, as soon as we get off of the Zoom, a half hour from now, you're going to go back to your limiting belief thinking, because that's what you've done your whole life. So we need something that's in our face, somewhere we're going to see it every day. A sign on our bathroom mirror, on our steering wheel, on our computer at work, in our office, somewhere with our unlimiting belief up, a sign we write out or print out or whatever, but we have to have a sign that we're going to see every day, because we need the reminder. Because we're going to forget, you're going to see the sign, you're going to be like, oh yeah, that's right. I'm not responsible for everyone else's happiness and success. So that's step two. Let's get it up somewhere you'll see it. Step three, is to start collecting evidence that the unlimiting belief is true. And when I say start collecting evidence, what I mean is actually start a notes page. And when you see, because you're going to be reminded every day, because you see your unlimiting belief, every day, when I want you to look for evidence that, maybe I am like, the limiting belief was negative feedback is a personal attack. The unlimiting belief from that limiting belief is negative feedback is precious treasure. And so what I need to do is start collecting evidence that that's true. Wow, I got negative feedback, and you know what? I did, that's true. I learned something, and thank God they told me, because now I know and I can change it. I would write that down as evidence that my unlimiting belief is true. So step two is write your unlimiting belief up, put it up somewhere you're going to see it every day. Step three is start collecting evidence, writing down evidence, because your brain's going to want to forget it and go back to its normal thing, screwing you over with the lies you tell yourself. So start collecting evidence. And then the fourth step is a combo step. The fourth step is to start speaking about and behaving as if the unlimiting belief was true. So one of the limiting beliefs on that list that I read you off, I hate cold water. That was my limiting belief. Ever since I was a little kid, I've hated to be cold. And I have hated cold water. I would do anything I could to avoid it. And then in 2014, I was challenged to sign up for the Alcatraz swim, where you swim from Alcatraz to San Francisco. And I couldn't swim, like I could barely swim a lap in a pool, scared to death of sharks, and hated cold water. And very quickly in the training for this, I had 9 months to train for it, I realized the cold water thing, that was the thing that was going to kill me. If I couldn't overcome that, I was screwed, because it was without a wetsuit and the water was going to be like 54 degrees. So what I needed to do is start cold water training, cold weather training. I needed to get used to being cold and not have it mess with me. So in March of 2014, early March, I was in Oklahoma City with some buddies for the collegiate wrestling national championships. We go on a trip every year to go watch that. And it was cold in the evenings there. It was in the mid 20s in the evenings. And we were all in our hotel rooms getting dressed to go out to eat dinner. And everyone else came out into the hallway bundled up in jeans and a coat and a scarf and all this stuff. And I walked out in shorts and a tank top. And they asked me, dude, what is going on? And I said, my unlimiting belief. I said, I love being cold. It's invigorating. So step 4 of this process is to start talking about yourself and start behaving in a way as if your unlimiting belief, the good one, is true. So we define it, we put it up, so we see it every day because we need the reminder. We collect evidence because we need to convince our brain. Remember, we're the attorney. We need to convince our brain that the limiting belief is a lie and the unlimiting belief is true. And then we need to start acting out the unlimiting belief before we believe it, before it is true. And that is how you change an unlimiting belief. And that is the process that I've seen happen 100 times to wild transformation in people's lives. We got 2 minutes. There's a lot of places I could go with this. Eliana, what should we do?
I think we should open it for questions.
Okay.
And I want to invite everyone on the audience to ask questions. And first off, I do want to thank you for this very powerful framework. I almost feel that there is a second session that can accompany this framework. But before we get there, any questions from the audience? If you are like me, you are making notes, you are trying to test this as we go with your own limiting beliefs. But any questions from the audience at this time?
And I'll do speed round answering.
Yeah, so I see one question from everyone. Well, this is more of a comment. It's awesome session. Thank you.
Thank you, Jyotsna. We've got like a minute or two. I will do speed round answers. If you have any questions about this, I'm happy to give you very direct, short answers. Or not, totally up to you, no pressure.
So I'll ask a question. I mean, you mentioned in this framework that a lot of these limiting beliefs come from childhood, they're very, very ingrained.
Yes.
How long, and you can be proactive in trying to change it, which is a step 1 through step 4. How long do you think it is reasonable for a person to change? What has been your experience?
It takes between 1 and 3 months.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
It depends on how intentional you are about it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's possible that you never change it because you're not actually focused on doing the work. But I've seen it happen again and again and again, and it takes somewhere between 1 and 3 months for people who are serious about changing it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy, the transformation. And people are like, yeah, it never happens to me anymore. The bad result is not a part of my life anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, so there are a few comments on the chat. Can you give an example of someone who failed and the reason why that happened?
Yeah.
And we take it that fail in applying this framework.
Yep. I'm thinking of a client who, another guy, 60% of my clients probably are male. So this guy, limiting belief around not being worthy, and how it ended for him: divorce, trouble in all relationships in his life, because as soon as someone shows interest in him, he tries to control things because he's so scared to death of losing people. And we went through this process, and he just was not in a place where he could practice this yet. So I have examples of people who have failed so far in this process, and it's because of the unwillingness to do scary things and get really uncomfortable. Don't get me wrong. When I say these changes happen and they're easy, that's after you change the limiting belief.
Mhm.
Changing the limiting belief can be very difficult because everything you have, your fear, anxiety, worry, control, all those things are going to be fighting you. Your brain's going to be like, what are you doing? Don't trust that person. Don't say this. Don't do that. And you have to overcome that inner voice, that inner liar, and do it anyway.
There is another question from Anat Sohar. Can you stay a couple more minutes?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to.
Anat, do you want to say your question? If you can unmute yourself.
Sure. So my question is, what if we choose the wrong result to focus on, the wrong actions? Are there wrong actions? Are there right actions?
So,
what if we
so
just,
talking this
don't
through with someone
define
is
it properly?
helpful. So talking it through is helpful because it takes some verbal processing. And so what I would suggest is talk with someone that you trust, who's willing to have this sort of conversation with you, and ask them to help you figure out, if you're having trouble figuring out how you contribute to the crappy result that you get, or having trouble defining the result that you get that you don't like, but you can't quite put your finger on exactly what it is, ask someone who knows you well, who you trust, that can kind of help you figure it out. Is one way to do it. Yeah, sometimes it can be a little elusive, and much of the reason this process can take an hour and a half or so to get to the root is because we're blind to many of these things. So it does take some thinking through and talking through sometimes. Does that answer the question, or was it something different?
It is partly answering it, but let's say, I've chosen something. Could it be like the wrong something? Could I, or when I'm saying, okay, this is my unlimiting belief, when you gave the example and I was hearing what that person said about his unlimiting belief, I'm like, well, I couldn't get from the limiting belief to the unlimiting belief without, I'm not responsible for any person's happiness, which is like the complete opposite. But the way he framed it specifically, it's like, I'm giving them opportunity.
Mhm.
So the unlimiting belief should be focused on something you can control. So what could he control in that? Well, he can't control other people's success and happiness. What he can control is he has some degree of control over how he goes about creating opportunity for people and then trusting them to take it from there. And so he realized, like, if he could just focus on that, that would alleviate the trouble for him. So it can take, so what you want to do, the unlimiting belief should be something that, okay, there's two variations on an unlimiting belief. The first one is what we're talking about, which is something I have control over, or some aspect of which I have control over. And then I want to focus on that. The other way to approach an unlimiting belief is by faith, to just take something like, I'm not worthy, right? If that's my unlimiting belief, because abandonment as a child, or neglect, or something, or abuse, or something like that, which is, people who experience that often have I'm not worthy limiting belief. Then the unlimiting belief for an I'm not worthy is, it takes faith to just believe, to state it, even though you don't believe it yet. So I am worthy of love. I can be trusted. I'm enough. I'm enough as I am today. I don't need to produce something more in order to be loved or to be worthy. And then if that's your unlimiting belief, is it exactly the right one? I don't know. These are things that we play with, and you might tweak it a little bit over time, or you might come at it from a different angle, but you'll get there. Even if you find an imperfect unlimiting belief, it is infinitely better than your limiting belief.
Mhm. That makes a lot of sense, Jeremiah. And would you say that the unlimited belief, to the extent that you are able, as you tweak it, has to be one where you can actually take action, right? In other words, it has to be not so generic. It has to, little by little, point to a direct action. Is that a good way to think about it?
So let's take I'm not worthy as it, because I've had many clients where that is the limiting belief, just that statement, I am not worthy. And it causes a bunch of drama at work, and they're always fighting with people, and they're defensive about things, and they're a control freak, and they're a perfectionist. Those are the results they don't like because of this feeling of belief that they're not worthy. So we'll take the corollary. I am worthy. I'm thinking of a specific client, and that was her unlimiting belief. I am worthy. And she put it up on her wall, and she started looking. As soon as she started looking for evidence, 2 weeks later, our next coaching session, she came back, and her commitment was to find at least 3 pieces of evidence that her unlimiting belief is true. And she came back, and she had like 12 things. And she's like, people would give me, they would be thankful to me for something, or they would tell me they appreciate something, or they would give me a compliment, and in the past, because I just thought I wasn't worthy, I would brush it off. And so as soon as she created the potential space that the unlimiting belief was true, even though she didn't believe it yet, but as soon as she created the possibility that it was true, she started seeing evidence right away that it was true. And so for her, it was a quick transformation, which she's, coming on 50 years old, and she's had it since she was a little girl. So it doesn't always have to be like, I am worthy is an unlimiting belief, a powerful unlimiting belief, and it doesn't suggest any direct action. What it does suggest is looking for evidence and starting to go into a conversation or go into a situation because you got the sign up, I am worthy. And you know how you would, because this is what we do. After we identify the unlimiting belief, we go back up the iceberg with that. So if I am worthy, just like we did with the limiting belief, we're like, if the limiting belief is true, how would you feel in these situations? How would you blah, blah, blah. We do the same thing with the unlimiting belief. So if you are worthy, let's just pretend, I know you don't believe it, let's pretend it's true, then how would you feel when you're in a situation where someone's giving you negative feedback or where there's potential conflict? And she's like, well, if I was worthy, it would be okay with me. I would be calm. I wouldn't have to defend myself because I don't feel attacked. And so just working through this, so she gets clear on if the unlimiting belief was true, how would she feel in her trouble situations? And we talk through how she would act. And so because now she's gathering evidence, she's got a bunch of evidence that she is worthy, and it gives her enough like courage and permission, I guess, to start behaving as if she was worthy before she believes it. So there isn't specific direct action that obviously comes out of the I am worthy unlimiting belief, but because you're clear on how you would feel if you were worthy and how you would act if you really felt that way. So we create a framework, we create almost like, it's not a script, but it's at least like an outline so that when you're in the situation next time, you have some idea of how to behave, even though you don't feel like it. With my limiting belief of I hate cold water, that one's pretty easy. I had another kind of tactical one, which is I'm bad at remembering names. That was a limiting belief of mine for most of my life. And those aren't like, I'm great at remembering names and I love cold water. Those, it's like more specific direct action that I could take.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. So I know we are way past the time, and I really want to thank the audience for sticking through. I know that this was a super important person to many of us. I certainly include myself as one of the very interested parties on this topic and on the framework. So thank you for sharing it.
My pleasure.
There's a lot of great comments. Thank you so much, everyone. I realize that this is our last session with Jeremiah this year. Of course, you're welcome to always reach out to him, reach out to me with questions. We will be sharing this recording with everyone, wrapping up the series of 3. Jeremiah, once again, thank you on behalf of Women in Big Data.
My pleasure.
Are there any words of wisdom besides the many that you have already shared that you will want to leave us with as we close this 3-part series?
Nothing new. I would just, I want to encourage you. So often we put so much pressure on ourselves. This just happened today. We put so much, a client wants to make some changes, and she's put so much pressure on herself to do it right and for it to be perfect. She has actually her document that she put together, my perfect team, my perfect day. I don't know if you've ever done an exercise like, here's my perfect schedule. Life isn't perfect. Neither are you, neither am I, and it's okay. And I just encourage all of you, like, you're good enough. Don't put pressure on yourself to like outperform or perform. You don't need to. And the pressure to do that tends to be the very thing that causes the biggest problems we have in our life. So I just encourage you that you are worthy and you're good enough, and personal development's great, but take the pressure off yourself.
Well, thank you so much once again, Jeremiah. We hope to welcome you in a different future session
Right
for
on.
Women in Big Data, but we are all very, very grateful that you have so generously given us your time and your wisdom. Thank you.
My pleasure. Super
And
fun.
thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.